We work with a ton of medical examiners and coroners simply to identify unidentified human remains. In a lot of cases, we'll work on identified remains that are homicide victims as well. It's very hard for folks to figure out who did something if they don't know who the victim is. And so we try to help them get that point of clarity of who the remains are, who they belong to, and then they can try to piece together that victim's last few days. Historically speaking, DNA testing that is done either on human remains or suspect DNA looks at about 20 to 24 markers of DNA. That's what's used in CODIS, which is the FBI's database to confirm identity. CODIS is really good at confirming identity, but with the 20 to 24 markers, you have to be a very close relationship, either parent, child, sibling, or self DNA. Instead of looking at 20 to 24 markers, we look at hundreds of thousands of markers at Othrem. So we build a very robust, high-performing, what's called a SNP profile. Using this profile, we can detect relationships out to about a sixth cousin using consumer databases for folks that have opted in to help with law enforcement. And so we have an in-house genealogy team. As I mentioned, there's agencies out there that have their own genealogists. And utilizing these profiles, they can start to reverse engineer from very distant relatives all the way to the direct family line of where the DNA originates from.
And specifically, how did your company help the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office identify the remains of Patti Rust?
Yeah, this was a case that they brought to us where they had exhausted traditional investigative measures to try to identify her. And it was a pretty straightforward case for us, just like a lot of these unidentified human remains cases are. We extracted DNA, sequenced a really beautiful profile of Miss Russ, and then we're able to use that with our in-house genealogy team to basically go back in time, find some distant relatives, and work their way forward. Ultimately, we came up with some investigative leads of the family that this DNA may belong to. And in relaying that to the investigators, they go and do what they do best and investigate and confirm those findings and ultimately deliver, news to a family that's been waiting a very long time. Get unidentified human remains. We tend to always get skeletal remains. Sometimes if it's more modern, there's a blood card that was taken at autopsy. But we can work from virtually any form of DNA. So whether it's in the form of bone, blood, tissue for unidentified human remains, or on suspect cases, generally the local crime lab where the offense took place has already done analysis, that short tandem repeat STR testing, and they'll develop a DNA extract or a vial of DNA, and that'll be sent into us to work from. And that's when we do our sequencing and look at hundreds of thousands of markers of DNA to build a really great profile that can then be used for forensic genetic genealogy. And again, depending on what we're contracted to do, we can either handle it in-house or we deliver the profile to our law enforcement partners for them to begin that analysis on their end.